Hi class, I'm going to go over your notes from Math 0404 on section 3.7, intervals and region. So I'm going to go over a few of these from this section, and your professor might ask you to upload a couple of others that I skipped, so for a graded homework assignment. So number 1 starts with review the inequality notation rewrite the inequality notation into interval notation. So this is written as an inequality. We have inequality symbols, less than on both sides. And we want to write them as an interval notation where we have either square brackets or parentheses, or one's a parentheses, one's a bracket, depending on the inequality symbols at the end. So on the first one, if we have P is between 0.82 and 0.97, we have a less than on the left side and a less than on the right side. There's no equal sign. So as an interval, this would be written as parentheses 0.82, comma, and the right endpoint 0.97, and close the parentheses. So that's how you would write all of these as an interval. Now, you may be asked to graph like you do in example 2. So if they're asking you to graph, for example, this particular inequality, this number is smaller than the second number, so 0 could be written somewhere in this interval. There's a bunch of ticker marks, but I can start here at negative 0.041, and the other one is at negative 0.009. Now I just know there's open parentheses on those intervals, and it would be anything in between. The p-value can be anything in between those two parentheses. So that would be the graph of that, and your job is to determine if these p-values are either inside or outside of that interval. So just write the word inside or outside next to those. Okay. On the next one I want to go over is one that has, for example, the less than or equal to symbols, like in 5b. So this one, instead of using parentheses, then we would use square brackets. So again, 0, these are both negative, so we might have negative 0.153, and somewhere over here we have negative 0.015. And we would shade everything in between. So that's the graph of that interval. If we were to write it as an interval, that would be negative 0.153, comma, to negative 0.015. And square brackets because they both have equal sign. If one doesn't, then it's a parenthesis on that end. Okay, so continue to work on those. The next one is number 7. This one asks, graph the interval p greater than 0.08 on a number line by using the appropriate notation, parentheses or square brackets, and shading the appropriate side. Plot the p-value equals to 0.09 on the same number line, and then the question's asking, is p inside the interval? So there's a lot going on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph this on the number line. So again, I can put 0 anywhere. This is a positive value, so I'm going to put 0.08 on the right side of the 0, and I'm going to put open parentheses, and the p is greater than 0.08 to the right. So I'm going to shade everything to the right of this. So put an arrow because it keeps on going. It goes on to infinity. If we were to write this as an interval, okay, which we're not, but as an interval, that would be parentheses 0.08, comma, all the way to positive infinity. It just keeps on going. Now we plot the point 0.09. So 0.09 is larger, so 0.09 would be somewhere here. So this is the p-value of 0.09. So if we plot that point here, you might want to use a different colored pen or pencil. I just have red here. The question's asking now, is that point inside or outside of the interval? And of course, this one is completely, that's correct. It's not outside, it is inside. Awesome. So just make sure to let us know if it's inside or outside. Okay. Now go ahead and go through these. Let me go through one of the two applications here on question number 9. It says, Sam went to a travel agency and asked what the cost is for a trip to Las Vegas. He was told that the entire trip, including airfare and hotel for 2 nights, will cost between $500 and $1,000. Sam has $350 for this trip. Write the cost of airfare and hotel as an interval. So the interval for his cost is between 500, comma, and 1,000. So that's the interval. Let's graph the interval and label 350. So if we were to graph this interval above, again, I'm labeling this interval as C for cost. I go to square brackets 500 all the way to square brackets 1,000, and I shade everything in between. So that's my interval that's been graphed. Now I plot 350. 350 happens to be less than 500, so 350 is to the left. Now the question is 350 in the interval? The answer is no, and you would write a complete sentence for us. Is 350 in the interval? No, $350 is outside. It's to the left of that interval. So does Sam have enough money to travel to Las Vegas? And the answer would be no, he does not have enough money to travel to Las Vegas. He would have to be inside the interval to be able to travel to Las Vegas. Okay, moving on to question number 10. It says, shade the appropriate region that represents the top 5% of exam grades. What percentage of grades for the exam did not make the top 5%? So first of all, this is one variable that's being graphed on the x-axis, and that one variable is grades. The height represents probabilities. So the exam grades, where would we have the top exam grades, the highest grades? Well, they would be on the right side of this axis. So to represent the top 5%, I'm going to draw a vertical line and just shade in this region where I would find the highest or the top grades. So this is where I would find the top 5% of the exam grades. Now the second question asks, what percentage of grades for the exam did not make the top percent? Well, if this entire curve represents 100% of the data, then we subtract that from 100 to get what is not shaded, which in this case is 95%. So 95% is what is not in the top 5%. Okay, so make sure to let us know in a complete sentence what is in the top 10%, where is that shaded region, and then what percentage of grades did not make the top 5%? Well, 95% of grades for the exam did not make the top 5%. That would be the complete sentence. All right, so practice with the other examples. And the last one for here is question number 13. This one says, fill in the blank. The shaded region represents what of men's height? So here we just want to know how you would rank this shaded region. So the shaded region represents this region here. And again, we only have one variable measured here, the men's height. So to the left, we have shorter men's heights and taller men's heights, right? Taller men are on the right. So here, the shaded region represents the shortest of men's heights, or the lowest. So here we're looking for an adjective that describes this shaded region. Okay, so based on the variable that's graphed on the x-axis. So do the same thing for number 14. All right, and that's it for section 3.7. Your professor might ask you to turn this in, the missing ones that we skipped, into Blackboard. And let's move on to the next video.